Look at that. They look like twins. Oh my God. I mean, they aren't twins. They really look very close. That is amazing. I knew I recognized him from somewhere. Yeah. Ethan's twin, whose name is Hunter, looks a lot like Prince Michael Jackson. Hey there. I'm gonna watch this. It's the Prime Video. One Night in Idaho, The College Murders. It's season 1, and there are 4 episodes. I'm gonna first watch the bonus, which is the trailer. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to watch everything and tell you what I think. I'm not going to show the actual series on screen. I'm just going to tell you my reaction. All right, let's get going. All right, so I'm going to watch the trailer because I haven't seen it. It aired June 15th, 2025, okay? And it says, in the middle of the night on November 13th, 2022, 4 university students were brutally murdered on an off-campus house in the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho. With exclusive and intimate access to figures closest to the victims, One Night in Idaho, The College Murders explores the emotional twists and turns of this American tragedy and its continued fallout. All right, let's check it out. Okay. Very exciting trailer. I didn't see it till now. Well done. Let me start watching so I can give you more of what I think. Okay. I haven't gotten too far into it. Just got past the introduction part. And the question keeps being raised, why? Why this happened to these kids? I have never met Bryan Kohberger, but I know him very, very well because he is a disguise. And his true identity is David Craig, my ex-boyfriend, who my brand new husband, Ron Goldman, in 1994. Yeah, the true OJ, the real OJ, I call him. And I'm the real Nicole. And David, I didn't know he was wearing any disguise. He's a CIA operative. There's a lot of that that goes on in the SGI, which is the Soka Gakkai International. It's a Nichiren Buddhist organization that I'm president of. Nobody knows that I'm president of it. I'm the only living president at this point because my genetic father, Daisaku Ikeda, died in 2023. I did all the work behind the scenes back in 1974, but it was him Daisaku Ikeda, who was nominated on the island of Guam. It's an island, right? To be the SGI president. And now that he's dead, the SGI kind of pretends that he continues to live and ignores me, the only living SGI president. But that aside, David Craig, David Wayne Craig is the true identity of Bryan Kohberger. Unlike Bryan, he's not a young man anymore. He is 71 years old at this point, and he had a major stroke in 2009, just before my infamous press conference happened in front of the courthouse in Los Angeles, downtown LA. And that's when I reconnected with him after not having him in my life for years. And I thought he was a new man. We got reacquainted, but he proved himself to be the same guy. And so we fell out of touch, and I ended up getting married. I got married and lost touch with him. And I had since moved to Augusta, Georgia. Finally, I guess it was in 2020, I was taking care of a neighbor named Elizabeth, who I suddenly realized had the exact same birthday as David's mother, Yvonne. And they were born on the exact same day. And then I realized, oh my God, this is her twin. I mean, because she reminded me of David. And I know that David has always wondered who his genetic mother is, because his mother, Yvonne, as creative and lovely as she was, he just knew that was not his genetic mother. IQ is passed along from the mother, to the children, and he had a different IQ. She was different than him. His mother that gave birth to him, Yvonne, he didn't, he was not her child. Yes, they were related for sure. She gave birth to him, but he knew that he had a genetic mother out there, and he probably knew because he had top secret. He had some kind of security clearance. Probably had heard that she had a twin somewhere, and that was his genetic mother. Well, in 2020, I didn't have this information. I mean, maybe they told me a long time ago when I was a child, but I didn't consciously remember this. I just knew when I was taking care of this lady who lived across the street from us named Elizabeth. When I put it all together, I just knew this was Yvonne's twin. Not that I ever knew she had a twin. I just knew it was, because David is a twin, and he was separated at birth from his twin. I'm a twin and triplet, and I was separated from my twin and my triplet brother at birth as well. So multiple births run in the family. I just knew it, and I could see the resemblance and everything. And I had been taking care of her for years, and it didn't even dawn on me for some reason. It was just the moment in time. They were turning 90. That was the big thing. And that's when after so many years of losing touch with David, I had lost touch with him just before I got married in 2014. I suddenly was moved to reach out to him and his family. Or I had to reach out to his family because I no longer had his phone number. And I finally made contact with his stepfather, but then I found his brother, and I ended up talking to his younger brother, after so many years, and he gave me the number. And then the stepfather finally got back with me and gave me the number, and it had been a lot of years. Yeah. So 2014 was 6 years, right? But I hadn't been in contact with his family for even longer. I was thinking it might be nice to get the twins together for their 90th birthday. I mean, Elizabeth couldn't travel, but I heard that Yvonne was down in Florida with his younger brother, Jonathan. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's possible. I don't know. I mean, we could do something, but it just never happened. I guess, I don't know, David shut it down. I mean, we reconnected on some level. And then I guess we kind of lost touch for a while. But at some point in 2022, I reached back out to David by text message, and found out that he told me his mother had just died. He didn't give me any details. And I was shocked because I had just discovered that my father, Dennis Wayne Elliot, had died 2 years before. And I immediately called his younger brother, Jonathan, to get the scoop because, David wasn't giving me very much information, and found out that she died on Memorial Day weekend. And that's when I started, Memorial Day, she died. And that was our anniversary when we were together as a couple. We started going out on Memorial Day of 1993. So I thought that was really interesting. And of course, the whole thing with my father, finding out about my father. And anyway, we started a new conversation by text in the summer of 2022. It wasn't very long. It was just here and there over the summer. And I had no idea what was happening in his life. He was not sharing very much. Had no idea that he had an alternate persona and that he was up in Idaho. No idea. I just assumed he was in LA. He was still using his LA number. And it was the same exact number that I had in the old days. I just had deliberately not kept it but it was the same exact number. And that was the last time I spoke with David, over the summer of 2022. And then after his mother died, his niece died in September on 9/4/2022, like 1994. And she died of pancreatitis. Her name is Dora. And she died the same age I was when I used to babysit her and take care of her. It was really interesting, and it's very sad. It was very sad. Since then, I've realized that probably was caused by weight loss drugs. And, I remember David was trying to tell me about weight loss drugs when I was talking to him in 2014 about, wanting to lose weight. And he was pushing weight loss drugs then. So I'm sure David had something to do with her death. I mean, I'm sure he pushed those weight loss drugs on her. And that's what can happen. You can get pancreatitis and die, and that's what I mean. I guess if you take too much of it or something, I don't know. And that's what she died of. And she was a young, healthy woman, um, with a lot of emotional issues. She was bipolar, which I know David is too, and I made sure he knew what I thought about that at the time. Anyway, it was a hard year for David. You know, his mother died. He had fought for years to get a settlement for her divorce. His stepfather had tried to divorce her and not give her anything. You know, in California, it's a community property state, and she's, you know, if he wants a divorce, he has to give her 50% of everything he earned while they were married. And he didn't. He just wanted, you know, she had dementia at this point, and he was just kind of dumping her, you know, in some nursing home that was not suitable or good for her. And it made David furious, and he fought like for years in court. He, you know, she had, I guess she had a public, I don't know, some kind of public, I don't know if it was a public defender or whatever, working, and he was working with them, and he was so frustrated because nobody would do anything, and she ended up dying before they ever reached any kind of legal settlement. And he was devastated by this because he had worked so hard. He's chanted his whole life. I mean, not his whole life, but chanted so hard, and the rage was starting, you know. And then Dora dies, and it has to do with him and him pushing those weight loss drugs on her. I'm sure that's why she died. At the time, I had no idea, and his brother Jonathan had no idea why his daughter died from pancreatitis. But that's one of the common horrible side effects of weight loss drugs. And then, you know, it just snowballed, and his rage was probably out of control. And I know he planned this. You know, he planned this. When this Idaho 4 thing happened, I just knew it was David, and I'm in the tips, and Anne Frank, Ann Taylor, and she mentioned that there was a tip that she needed to follow up on and investigate. I'm pretty sure she was talking about me. She finally found me in the tips because I'm the reason they caught Bryan Kohberger. I had no idea David was Bryan Kohberger at the time, and when they named the suspect, I was shocked. I'm like, Bryan Kohberger. But then all I had to do was look at him and examine him and see, yeah, this is one of his disguises. And I recognized him. I recognized his body. He had lost a lot of weight. You know, when he had his major stroke, he went on. He didn't tell me this, but I was always, when I knew him, when I was going out with David, I was always talking about going all vegan. I wanted to do that. I never could do it. Oh, he never had an interest in going all vegan. But then he had his major stroke, and I'm sure that's what he did. And that's why he's thinner now, because he went all vegan, and he doesn't want to have another major stroke. And he's living this young life. You know, he has to stay young. He's always been very young for his age. And it's kind of amazing, actually. But yeah, I'd love for him on national TV, worldwide TV, love for him to take off his mask. That's what I've been waiting for all these years, and he's never done it. But perhaps he and Ann Taylor had never come across my tips before. Yeah, I told Moscow PD that I told them to put the LAPD to shame. And I told them that they would never catch him if they didn't start chanting. They had to chant, or they were never going to get him. And I explained that he's Devadatta from the Lotus Sutra. Let's do this. Let's put LAPD to shame. And that's what they did. And I was so flabbergasted when I saw him take full responsibility and declare himself guilty of all charges. That took a lot of courage, and I commend him. But, you know, I really think it had a lot to do with Ann Taylor finally coming across my tips. And the tips, you know, the tips that she said, there's a whole, I mean, she didn't present me in court. I mean, at least not in the public hearing. she came up with 4 alternate people it could have been, but they weren't. It wasn't what I spoke about in my tips. But I know she was referring to me. I think they finally found my tips, and they were very, very interesting. And that's how they identified him. I am his genetic daughter. I know it's kind of weird. So all they needed to do was check my DNA over at the crime scene, the O.J. Simpson crime scene, because my DNA was in Nicole Brown Simpson's hair. She had just been at my house that day, the day of the murders, the afternoon of the murders, and they had to do was compare that DNA with the DNA at the Idaho 4 crime scene, and they had a match. I was the daughter of the person, and I told them I would be. I mean, or at least maybe I didn't in the tips. I might not have mentioned that he was my genetic father, but once they got with the FBI, they told them, okay, we have this DNA from the crime scene over at O.J. Simpson, the O.J. Simpson crime scene. Let's compare that DNA. And actually, yes, I think David's DNA was there too. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, he had. I was told in 1994 that there was unidentified DNA at the O.J. Simpson crime scene that they never identified. Obviously it was unidentified, and all they'd have to do is compare that with the DNA over in Idaho, and they had a match. Yeah, they had to come up with a cover story. They had to go through their trash over in Pennsylvania and pretend that the father was his genetic father. He's not. That is not his father. Michael Kohberger, is that his name? But that was the cover story, because everything's top secret. Okay. And they didn't. I mean, they admit to breaking protocol for the purpose of identifying. I guess there was no other public story they could tell, and but the truth is, the top secret story is, they identified. I mean, trying to find Bryan Kohberger was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I was how they identified him, and that's why David was so careless and left so many clues. I think he enjoyed leaving clues for the little baby Moscow PD. He's had a career that has spanned many decades, and he has a totally clean record. He's never been caught, and he chants the words Nam with Myoho Renge Kyo, and he's devoted to the mystic law of cause and effect through sound. Myoho Renge Kyo is the title of the Lotus Sutra, and which is the teaching that Shakyamuni Buddha, who lived about 2,600 years ago, intended to leave to posterity. And there are many forms of Buddhism, but it's only the Lotus Sutra that he intended to leave for humanity. And he told humanity to forget about all his other teachings, which he had to lead many people up to the understanding. Enlightenment is hard to explain to people to the common person who has never experienced it, and different audiences needed different explanations. And that's what all the different sutras that he expounded are about. They're for different audiences, trying to bring people closer and prepare them for the whole truth, and which is the Lotus Sutra. And that's why he said, just throw away all the other teachings now. This is the whole truth, the Lotus Sutra. But unfortunately, a lot of other Buddhists, all other Buddhists, cling to other teachings, other sutras, and which was against Shakyamuni's wishes and is a slander to him, quite honestly. So, I mean, the only true Buddhism comes from the Lotus Sutra. That is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it's the truth. It's only the truth that heals. So I urge everyone to embrace the Lotus Sutra and to chant Nam together with Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, so let me continue watching. I just want to present that to you so you have an understanding of where I'm coming from as I comment. And I guess it would be interesting if I stop it when something has an impression on me enough for me to speak. So that's what I'll do going forward here. Okay. Let's continue. So I turned on my light. So I'm at the point where, in the episode where Ethan's family has parents have been talking about how he's IVF. Is that what, in virtual fertilization? Yeah. When I heard that one of the people was a triplet, I just kind of think that I immediately knew that David targeted that person. And I know nobody talks about that. And I don't know, maybe nobody knows because it's not, they think it's Bryan Kohberger, who is just he's now 30 years old. And, but David would have definitely targeted a triplet in this. I mean, that was no coincidence. He knew these kids. And I suspect maybe he was their drug dealer or something. And I suspect that this was always what I felt, that, he's an older guy, right? But he looks really good for his age. He's a really good looking guy. And Bryan Kohberger is a very awkward looking guy. I mean, but he's not bad. I mean, you can see David shining through. But David is, he was at in 2022, he was pushing 70. I mean, he was 68 that year, turning 69 on February 11th, which is Jose Toda's birthday, by the way. And he was the second born twin, and it was Ross Drivelot who was the firstborn twin. They look like totally different from one another. He's tall, blonde, blue-eyed. That's David, and then Ross is small little guy with brown eyes, brown hair. He blended in, with the Japanese in Japan, and he later became bald. Very different men. So a very different looking men, and I guess they are brothers on some level, somewhere, somehow. I don't know. They don't look at all like brothers, though. So David would have targeted a triplet because I'm a triplet. Part of him was kind of putting himself out there. A part of him was turning himself in. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to hear him talk more about it, but I felt like he was turning himself in. All the things he did. I know he intentionally left that knife sheath underneath Maddie's body. I always knew Maddie was his focus because Maddie is his type, and I just knew immediately. I knew it wasn't Kaylee because people were talking about Kaylee. No, she had a stalker. No, it wasn't Kaylee. That wasn't his type. It was Maddie. And I knew right away. And I'm sure that he approached Maddie trying to get involved with her at some point, but she's just like, and she probably just didn't give him the time of day. He was an old guy. I mean, really attractive old guy, but it would be like her going out with her grandpa or something, right? But he was real. I mean, he just, David does not look 70. He's 71 at this point. He does not look 71 at all. I think he probably looks about 50-ish, like a really nice looking 50-ish. That's the way David always has been. And, he's really under that mask. He's really protected from UV rays. I'm sure he's really, he probably had that in mind too. It would be good for his aging process to be hiding underneath a mask that would protect him from the UV rays. Yeah, and I sometimes think how he must have really long hair under there, and his hair must be beautiful. He has blondish hair, but it would be protected from the sun, so it wouldn't be that blonde anymore. His hair gets darker if it's not exposed to sun, but his hair would be lighter than mine. Mine is a very dark blonde. I mean, a lot of people would call this brown. I'm like the darkest blonde there is. His is a number of shades lighter, but it doesn't. His hair only gets lighter in the sun, like mine. I don't obviously get a lot of sun, and this is why my hair is so dark right now. As I was watching the surprise bogus press conference on August 10th, 2009, filmed by TMZ, who broke the story of Claire, I noticed how light my hair was. My hair always got really blonde at the ends when I was in California and when I was in Florida. I think that a lot of it was from Florida. Florida seemed to really lighten my hair a lot, more so than even LA. And when I did that press conference, I had been living in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I had been. And, I came from New York, but I had been down in Florida for a while. And yeah, my hair really lightens up. But yeah, right now you can see I'm not getting very much. And, when I moved here to New York, and I know I'm getting off topic, but I'll get back on topic in a minute. But while I'm talking about my hair, when I moved here, the dry, cold air here really did a number on my hair. My hair, I think I lost 6 inches. The 6 inches of my hair broke off. My hair got like 6 inches shorter when I moved here. So I'm going to have to really moisturize my hair every winter. Nowadays in the summertime, it's very, very humid and it's a different story. But yeah, every winter, I had forgotten that I needed to moisturize my hair in the winter months on the East Coast. I mean, I didn't grow up in this kind of climate exactly. I just visited this climate a few times a year. But I had forgotten how my hair needed help during the winter months and lost 6 inches. But anyway, back to this. So I just am explaining why he did this. He did this because, his life fell apart in 2022. He had reached the end of something in his life. He was a lot closer to his mother than he wanted to admit. He was a mama's boy, and he wouldn't have ever admitted that, but he was. And she couldn't defend herself, and he tried so hard to, even though he was always very critical of her and always pushing her away as her son, he fought so hard for her, and she died a very sad death in a facility. I don't know. He said he wouldn't tell me details. He just said of natural causes. That's what they always say. But she had dementia, and I don't know what happened. He wouldn't tell me. But it sounds like it was very sad. And she was put away, and I don't know why they couldn't have hospice at home. She was in a hospice, but they put her in a facility. I don't know. I guess because it was cheaper that way. It's free. Hospice is free. You don't pay for it. But I guess, it's not extensive enough to do. You need a caregiver. And I guess because it was, his brothers were paying for it, they decided that she should go to a facility to save them money or something. And yeah, she died alone. I think, I don't know the details, but it sounds like it was really sad, and it was a huge defeat for her. It just shattered David, and he was just not the same. I guess this is what I'm gathering just from my sense of him, even though we didn't talk extensively. It was very brief. He cut it short. I talked to his brother more extensively, but he was just in despair, and that just turned into rage. And then my mother died, and my family, I had told him that my family didn't tell me about my father's death, and I had just found out about it that year, 2022. I found out about it in June or something like that of 2022. He had died almost 2 years before. And that put him in a rage as well, because he's very protective of me. It's kind of funny. He totally tortured me. You wouldn't think he'd be at all protective of me, but he's got different sides of him, different personalities. there's a part of him that's very, very protective of me, and it made him furious that my family didn't tell me about my father's death. And then my mother dies on October 5th after Dora dies, his niece and little girl I used to take care of at the age she died. It just so happens, I don't know. Then my mother dies on October 5th, and nobody tells me. Again, my family refuses to contact me, and it's my mother. I'm her firstborn child. I'm the firstborn baby she gave birth to, and nobody has the courtesy to inform me. I mean, you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to say anything else. Just tell me. Send me a letter if you don't want to talk to me, but that's the least you should do is like you have a legal obligation to inform me. But no, I had to stumble upon her online obituary as well, just like my father's. And I hadn't checked my father. I guess I hadn't Googled my father for 2 years because I didn't find out about him for a couple of years. But my mother, I was on a live stream. I was on a training, and somebody got up. Somebody was featured on. It was a webinar, I guess, and they were talking about their father dying, and I'm like, oh, I should like Google my mother and make sure she's still living, because you never know with my family, she might be dead. And I Googled her, and right live, the camera's on me, I find out my mother died. Oh, it was such a shock. I was really upset, and I couldn't go to any more of that training, but it's recorded. The moment I discovered my mother had actually died. Yeah, and that's what did it. I found out in November. And I don't know what date exactly, but it must have been just before November 13th, the day of the murders. That's what set him off. That was it. He had reached the point of no return. And I don't know, it wasn't the 13th, November 13th. Wasn't that some kind of special day with Elliot Rogers? My last name is Elliot. That whole Elliot Rogers thing, I did a whole thing on the Zodiac Killer's Daughter channel. If you look below on my channel here, I have a playlist from that channel that contains all its content. And I did a whole live stream series about Elliot Rogers. I read his manifesto and offered my reaction. And there's definitely a link between Elliot Rogers and Bryan Kohberger, because David is always trying to reveal the truth in indirect ways, and nothing works. And so I guess this was his way of really forcing the issue. And it's very sad that kids excited to, for the future, had to sacrifice their lives. But I know that David looked at them and resented the lives they were enjoying, because he was never allowed that in his own youth. And yeah, I'm sure Maddie rejected him. She doesn't want to go out with her grandpa. Yes, a very youthful looking grandpa, but come on. She doesn't want to go out with somebody that could be her grandpa. I mean, even if he lied and said he was 50, whatever, she doesn't want to go out with her father either, And I guess he just, he's frustrated with his life. His life, he always wanted to be successful. He always wanted to have lots of money, and, he wanted to have a family. And nothing worked out in his life, and he's angry. And these young kids had the lives he would have wanted to have when he was young. And it's too late for him. And I think he was critical of the way they lived their lives. They did a lot of, I know they did drugs, and of course they drank. And I know David always people when he wants to teach them a lesson. I mean, he always has some justification. People, and my tips contain a lot of that information. They got a lot of that information from my tips. The Moscow PD, and so did Ann Taylor. when she finally found those tips that she mentioned in court. So that's why. I mean, it doesn't really satisfy. It's not a reason. It's not a valid reason why, but I believe those are some of the many reasons why, from David's perspective. And I really look forward to him documenting his explanation, his own personal story. And I hope the victims, get the proceeds. But yeah, he needs to tell his story. I'm very interested myself in that story. And I hope he helps me understand why he did what he did to me. I hope he writes about that and includes that in the story, because I'm one of his victims too. And he loves me. And it's like, how could you do something like he did to me if you love me? It would be very healing for me as well to 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 read his story from his perspective, because I want to know why too. Okay, let me continue watching this, and I'm obviously not going to have time to watch more than one episode. It's still early in the day, so I have plenty of time, but I'm going to just take a break after I watch this one. Okay, I need to continue watching so I can finish it. It's a 45-minute episode, and I'm only let's see how many minutes into it. I'm only 12 minutes and 21 seconds into it, but let's continue. Okay. I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you something that I've been noticing about Ethan's triplet brother. I'm just trying to figure out how to do this. Okay. Who does this look like? Does this young man look familiar? Just a little familiar? I took another photo. There. This one has a little arrow in the way. Who does that look like? Who does that look like? It's somebody that I've been talking about recently. Don't you think he looks a lot like Ethan's twin? What is his name? Is it Hunter? Hunter Chapin? Doesn't he look a lot like? Okay, let me bring up another web page. Let's look at the images so I can show you. All right, let me share. Doesn't it look a lot like this guy, Mr. Prince Jackson? Let's see. Let me find a good. Look at that. I guess I should bring up the other one. Let's see, so we can compare it. Let me see. Is there a better picture of this? Let's see. That's amazing. Look at this. Yeah, let me see if I can make it a little. Well, I can't really. Oops. Look at this. Move this. Okay, it won't let me. Look at this. Oh, I don't want it big. This is challenging. Yeah, I just want it a little smaller so we can compare them better. Look at that. No, don't get big. No. I just want it smaller. Make it smaller. Actually, I think I can do this. Wait, no. No. There. Okay. There. I don't think it's going to let me move it if I do it like that. And I can't move this, can I? I can move this over a little bit. Look at that. They look like twins. Oh my God. I mean, they aren't twins. They really look very close. That is amazing. I knew I recognized him from somewhere. Yeah. Ethan's twin, whose name is Hunter, looks a lot like Prince Michael Jackson. Hmm. You know, I don't want to make any light of anything here. I mean, I know it's a terrible thing that happened, but this really goes into. Let me stop sharing. Sorry about that. This really goes into why the question, why did someone do this? Why? Another thing that David, one of his, I don't know what they say, calling cards, as a serial killer, one of his calling cards was my children. David knew all about me before he realized he knew me. Okay, he knew about me before he officially met me as an adult, and then once he met me, he didn't realize who I was. He knew about me. I'm in a special lineage, right? And they've created a lot of babies out of my DNA, and I guess a lot of people refer to me as princess. I'm queen, really, but I was born queen, but I was really young, and so you don't really call a young girl a queen, right? I have grown into that title, I guess, at this point. But yeah, he knew about me before I don't think before he met me as a child, but he heard about me before he met me as an adult, and when I was an adult finally. And even after he met me, he didn't realize it was me for a long time. And he was chanting so hard to meet this, let's just call her Princess, who is me. He chanted so hard to meet Princess. He always told me that he thought that she would like him. He would tell me stuff he would me and tell me stuff. And it's funny because when I remember it, I don't remember being, it's like he almost like told me about this stuff. But I believe I was when he told me that he wanted so much to meet Princess because he knew that she would just really like him. He thought she would really like him. And he wanted that for himself. He wanted to marry her and have a family with her. And that was his whole thing. And he didn't realize that she was me for the very, very longest time. And it wasn't until it was too late and everything that he finally, because I didn't remember. It wasn't until my memories came up and he was following me online and he listened to what I said and realized, oh my God, it's her. Oh my God. He probably put it together after it was too late and I was already gone. That's the story of David's life. He always realizes things when it's too late. He doesn't realize what he has until it's too late, kind of thing. That's the story. That's kind of the theme in his life, and that's why he's so enraged. Maybe he realized it when I was in his life because he used to scrape off my feet when I was sleeping. When he took me, he would take my DNA. I'd wake up catching him cutting my toenails and scraping my feet, the skin off my feet. He would me and tell me what he was doing with it because I just know. I mean, I just remember. I don't know. I was told different things at different times, and I've put it together. He would deposit my DNA at every crime scene that every murder he committed. So at some point, I'm in his life, and he realizes it's me, and I'm not yet remembering, and then I remember after he's no longer in my life. I don't know, but that became. I don't know what they do, what you call it when a serial killer leaves the same, like a symbol. He writes a symbol, like the Zodiac. My father, Dennis Wayne Elliot, he had a little symbol, that he got from a Cheerios cereal box, cross. It looks like, like when you're shooting a gun, like the crosshairs, right? And David had his. He deposited my DNA at every crime scene that he left behind. And it started with the O.J. Simpson case. My DNA was found in Nicole's hair, and I guess he just left my DNA at every crime scene after that. I'm really not sure when it started to be his calling card or whatever they say. So he knew about Princess before he knew I was her and before he met me as an adult. She had lots of children. I guess he had connections to find out who they were, where they lived, whatever. And he would hunt them down if he felt like they were not healthy or they needed to be taught a lesson. He had different reasons for justifications, which are crazy justifications. I'm not condoning what he did, but he'd have different reasons for different people. And he'd tell me this stuff after he told me, and this is why I know this, it was like his ongoing confession to me. And he always said, if you remember this, Claire, you can speak freely, because I was drugged, and that was legal. He had a security clearance, so he couldn't speak freely, but I didn't have a security clearance. And one of the loopholes with security clearances is that you can tell an unconscious person everything. You can confess to an unconscious person. You can confess to a child, a minor. You can tell them things, top secrets and things like that, things that are classified. You can tell children. I mean, I don't know if that's still the case, but it was when I was growing up. And that's why my father, who was a CIA operative, and man, he did this. He told me everything. Daddy, he was CIA operative. Ross is, he's also FBI. They all told me everything. They were legally permitted to do so because I was a minor. But then once I became an adult, they had to alter the way they told me, because they can't tell an adult. But if the adult is unconscious, I was semi-unconscious. Obviously, I still had I was awake in my mind. I just couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't feel, I mean, a lot of my brain was shut down, but I was still there. But yeah, I remember in 1994, Ross, he's my FBI special agent. He would speak in speed speak. Like if he sped up his speak, he knows how to do that. Some people know how to do that. And he'd speak really fast, and he would tell me things really fast. And if you do that, it's legal. He can tell me things if he speeds up his speech so that it's unintelligible to the average person. And maybe it was unintelligible to my conscious mind. And I'm like, what did you just say, or whatever? But it went in my brain, and I remembered it later. He did all kinds of things. It was kind of like a memory experiment to see what I would remember, when I'd remember it. He'd do things in different ways to see how it affected how I remembered things. But yeah, he would do speed speak. He'd do that a lot. I think he told me a lot that way. And also, if somebody is in a state of trauma like I was in 1994, they can talk to somebody in that mental state, that's in a state of trauma like I was after the murders. Otherwise, they can't tell anyone, right? Or they go to federal prison, right? But he did things so that it was legal, and he taped it. It's all on tape. I'm really looking forward to the documentaries that Daddy and Ross and everybody puts together. I think it'll be so healing for the entire world to watch what happened in 1994. I mean, what actually, the actual footage of what happened, not just some documentary or guessing and theorizing what happened and sharing everybody's thoughts and experiences around it, but the actual footage of what happened. I don't know that they have the actual footage of the murders per se, but everything that was happening in David's orbit and those around us, me, my roommates, Cato, Nicole, all of that, it'll be very healing for the entire world and me. But anyway, Idaho 4, the point I'm trying to make is that, first of all, I'm a triplet. Us triplet, my triplet brother and my identical twin sister, we were the only babies, the only embryos that survived my mother's heroin-induced. My mother was injected with heroin, and she was an alcoholic who drank a lot of gin, and right straight out of the bottle. She did this when we were in utero, and as a result, when Greg, my younger brother, who I did not grow up with, I grew up with Mark Elliot as my younger brother. The babies were swapped at the hospital, but Greg, I was being injected with heroin as a newborn because I was born a heroin addict apparently, and they cut us off cold turkey when my mother became pregnant with her second child, and we went through withdrawals, of course. And my brother Greg only had to contend with gin. And boy, did my mother drink it like crazy because she didn't have any heroin. And so she drank it like crazy. The heroin did a lot of damage to my identical twin sister, and not to mention our triplet brother. And that's why the second pregnancy, she was not going to do heroin. They were not going to inject her with heroin. I was the only baby that made it out of there normal and healthy, and they weren't going to do that again. But boy, did Greg deal with a lot of alcohol. And I remember Daddy telling me to touch my mother. My mother would be passed out, unconscious from drinking so much, and she's pregnant. And Daddy would tell me to talk to Greg, that he needed my help, and put your hand, put your head up to her tummy and hug her tummy and talk to him and help him pull through. And that's what I would do. And that's why when my mother came home with my brother Mark, I was, no offense to Mark. I mean, I know he takes offense at this. I was just really disappointed because he wasn't the same baby. And I could tell, I didn't have that bond with him that I had with Greg, because I had talked to him throughout the pregnancy to help pull him through, because he really struggled to survive, even just with gin. I mean, she drank so right out of the bottle, really, really a lot of it. It wasn't like just lightly drinking. I mean, she went crazy because she was having so many withdrawal symptoms from heroin. They just cut us off cold turkey. But he pulled through, and he was born healthy and normal too. I mean, it's a miracle, but he had a hard time. He didn't have the benefit of having two other babies in the womb like I did. I was the leader in the womb, and I got us. We were. I pulled us through. It was hard work, but we did it. He was all by his lonesome, and that's why he needed me. That's what Daddy explained to me, and I did. And he would kick. He would respond when I talked to him. He would move around. He'd kick, whatever. But yeah, that's what kept him going. And then I never got to see him. He did not come home with my mother. And he was the bigger baby too. My brother was born prematurely, and they waited for an extra week to give him an extra week of development. They didn't want to induce labor too early, and that's why my mother was in the hospital for 2 weeks waiting for their mother, the mother who gave birth to my brother Mark, a relative of ours who raised my identical twin and Greg. My mother she didn't know why she was waiting. They were just waiting for Mark to have another week of development before they induced labor. And he was a preemie, and he went home. He was not put in any kind of incubator or anything. He was okay, but he was a preemie, and he wasn't happy about it. He was always my brother was not a happy baby. He was always crying, and he was a small little thing because he was premature. But he came out angry, my brother. And I didn't connect with him the same way, and it was always like a competition. He was like a little baby who wanted all the attention, and he was always happy when he was really. I just remember when he had gotten to a certain age, and my mother realized I saved his life, and my mother would leave us in the hot car, and the baby. I had to take the baby out of the car. He was really struggling, and an adult saw that we had been left in the car. I was a toddler. I was 2.5 when my brother was born, so I was like a toddler. And they're like, your mother left you in the car. And anyway, my mother, oh, boy, she almost got in big trouble that day. But I had no choice. I had to take the baby. She had commanded me not to leave the car, but I had to get the baby out. He was going to die. I mean, he was really struggling. And then the woman discovered it, and it was like she was going to call the police. And oh, my mom got us out of there, and she almost got in major trouble. Anyway, after that, I said, take the baby with you from now on, and she did. And then she started bonding with her baby. She never bonded with me, but she bonded with my brother because I insisted I said, I'll stay in the car. You take the baby. She took the baby, and she would she shoplifted in those days. She didn't need to. She had money, but she just had an addiction to shoplifting. And the baby was very convenient because she could hide things in the baby, in his clothes in front of him. She was carrying a baby, she could just stuff things in front of the baby. And and she ended up bonding with him, and then she didn't want to have me anymore. She would tell me she didn't want me anymore. She just wanted one baby, and she didn't want two. And my brother, that just made my brother so proud. I just remember him as a baby, like, she likes me better than you. And I'm just like, be quiet, you baby, you dumb baby. No, so what, he was always so happy when I was suffering and crying. He'd be like, because he was always crying, and I guess it made him feel um, better that I was the one crying and all sad. And I just remember that between my brother and me, and yeah, I just didn't have the bond with him that I had with Greg. All right, but I know this is about the murders. I'm going into all of this because I don't know why I went into all of that, but I went into it trying to explain that David targeted my children. And I really do believe all four of these beautiful young people were my genetic children. Now, Maddie looks a lot like her mom. She doesn't look like me as much, but she reminds me of me. And that's why I knew that she was his target, because she kind of, there's like I mean, I know right now you can't really tell, but if I bleach my hair, and I don't know, there's just something about her that's similar, just kind of similar to me. I know, but Kaylee reminds me of me too. But I think Maddie kind of reminds him of me, and that's what he likes about me. The part of me that is Maddie is what he likes about me, and that's how I knew that was his initial target, the girl he liked. And of course, a triplet. Of course, I'm a triplet. All of that, and see it just. And now I see how closely Ethan's brother Hunter looks. He looks so much like Prince. I'd never even noticed that before I watched this documentary. I'm sure they did. They had the lighting just right, just so to make that clear and obvious. And so could they be? Now, Ethan and his triplet siblings, they always keep babies together. They were, when they were conceived, and I believe they were naturally conceived if they're triplets. Well, I guess they could take my egg and it could spontaneously create triplets, right, in the laboratory, probably. But I believe they were naturally conceived. And I believe maybe they have the same father as Prince Jackson. And that's why Ethan's brother looks so much. I mean, they could almost be twins. They look so much alike. You can tell they're not twins, but boy, do they look very identical. And that would mean it would be another set of babies I could naturally conceived with Cyril Rouault, who's from France. Cyril was my boyfriend when I moved to Napa Valley in 1995. David and I broke up, and I was devastated. And I went to a restaurant. Get the name of it. It was a really cool Mexican compadres. Is that it? And I lived in Santa Elena, and it was the next little town over, Compadres. I think that's what it was. That was the name. It was just the next town down from Santa Elena. Santa Elena, and then there's a little town, and then it's Napa, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it was that little town, and I can look it up now, and I can tell you, I can confirm this. Yeah. Oh, it's in Napa. In Napa. They closed on February 18th. Oh, that's so sad. Why did they close? All right, let me just share the screen. I'm sorry. I know this is about the murders, but I know that I'm meant to comment on all of this. All right, Compadres Rio Grill, Lincoln Avenue. It was not in Napa. It was in a little town above Napa. Is that the only location? Oh, back in 2019. Oh, they lost their lease? Oh, I don't know. They were not in Napa when I was there. That's right. Yountville. That's it. Yountville. It used to be in Yountville. And the last 12 years, and I guess what it says here is it operated in Napa Valley for 32 years, including the last 12 on Lincoln Avenue in Napa. It announced its closure with a sad and broken heart on February 8, 2019, the owner, Rick Enos, cited high rents, rising costs, especially labor, and declining sales as reasons for closing. It had been open in Yountville before moving to Napa. Yountville. I haven't heard that name for a long time. Wow. I guess Cyril knows all about that. He probably keeps in touch with John Truchard and all of that. The Truchard. Let me see if Truchard is still a wine. I mean, I'm sure they are. They're a very successful wine label. Truchard. There it is. Vineyards. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, wait. I'm gonna share. They have really. Oh, share screen. Oh wow. Look at this. Yeah, there's the house they built. This is the little winery here. Look at this. I don't remember this. Truchard. Oh my goodness. Um, let me make myself a little bigger here. Okay. Uh, I own this property. I guess I own a whole business, possibly. I think so. This guy, John Truchard, is the son, and he was good friends with Cyril, my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend. Cyril was from France, and he didn't know English when he first came to America, and bumped in. I don't know how he encountered the Truchards, but they gave him a job working in the family business. He was an aspiring winemaker. He wanted to bring his skills home to France and turn his grape growing family business into a winery as well. And he wanted to learn all the skills in Napa Valley. And the Truchards, he stayed in their home, and they were really, and Cyril in those days was very humble and sweet and so appreciative of everything. He was in a brand new country and all intimidated, and he took a lot of, he probably was paid hardly nothing, and he just really wanted the experience of living with an American family and everything. um but yeah, he ended up leaving. He met me, and I kind of had an influence on someone. He ended up like, trying to motivate the Mexicans to start picketing and earning their rightful salary. And I know the father didn't know what had happened. And yeah, eventually he left. He ended up becoming roommates with some Nichiren Buddhists that I introduced him to that were his age. He's a little younger than me. I was in my 30s. He was in his 20s. And he made some really good friends. And I told him, this is the American experience, okay? The Truchards, that is not the American experience, That is not the way most American kids grow up. It's, he lived in an old house in Napa, and that's the American experience, okay? Not everybody lives on a vineyard in Napa. And he doesn't even, he doesn't even own, the father doesn't even own it. And he makes everybody think that he does. And of course, his name is all over the place, like Trump's name is. But I own him, okay? And I also own the family estate that Cyril's family works. Somebody has to live in the estate, okay? You can't just leave an estate unoccupied. So his family that's the family we chose to and work the land and grow the grapes. And Cyril, I suppose he's taken it to the next level and has developed a wine label and everything. That was his dream. It was also his dream to be president of France. I guess he's still working on that one. But he has his babies, and there are babies. And apparently, we were trying to have babies. Okay, Cyril this is the father of Paris and Prince, the two oldest Jackson children. I adored him. He's actually the boyfriend I've had that most reminds me of my current husband, Dean. Um, he was pure. He was a pure heart. I really do believe he was a virgin. He didn't tell me that. He didn't want me to know. but I do believe he was a virgin. He was just very pure because he had, growing up, he struggled with, um, he crossed eyes and he had to train his eyes to look forward. I think his mother helped him do that, or his grandmother, and so he was picked on as a young person, and many times when a young person is teased and picked on and has a hard time early in life, um, they develop more character. They develop more depth, and that was what drew me to Cyril. David and I, well, it was really David that was trying to declare, and it was really a devastating time for me, and I just went to this restaurant, Compadres, to meet a guy, and I sat there. I was gonna have something to eat, and I had something to eat at the bar. The bartender was really cool. He's really nice, and his friends were there, and it was his friends. His friends were John Trouchard and his girlfriend, and Cyril was there, and that's how I met Cyril, and that he was just perfect for me, and yeah, I mean, I didn't know if I was going to meet a guy that night, but boy, did I. And he was taken with me. I was taken with him, and it just worked out until his sister came to town and visited. And, he said that in France, what they do, or at least his friends, they try to have a baby first, and then they get pregnant, they have the baby, and then they get married. And that was our plan. We were trying to have a baby, and I just never got pregnant. I thought, because they take my embryo, and this is what they always did. I was a baby machine, is what I was informed of. I mean, I was a baby machine. I popped out babies all the time, and but they never let me have them. And I just thought, oh, you have my period, and they just take my embryo with, and then my period would happen. Some women, the period is very punctual. Mine wasn't exactly punctual. It was just every month I had a period, but it wasn't the same day every month, right? And that's why, because I was always getting pregnant, and they take my 1 month embryo, and then I get my period, right? And it was never, they had to wait until the embryo was of certain maturity before they take it. They couldn't just take an embryo that wasn't mature to a certain level. And this is why, my periods would happen at different times. But, I always had a period every month. Didn't know I was pregnant. Sometimes we get our hopes up if I was a little late, but it never happened. And then Cyril's sister came to visit in June of, it was 96 by then, right? Right, it was 96. Did I say 95? It was 96. Valentine's Day, 96. And then Cyril's older sister came to visit in June of 1996. And that's when I realized, oh, hell no, this is not my husband. Because Cyril just totally changed into became a different person. He was Mr. Control Freak, critical, just thinking, I don't know. His greatest criticism of me was I wasn't ambitious enough. And I'm sure he's laughing about that to this day. Yeah, Claire, not ambitious enough. His sister, what a spoiled little bitch she was. I don't. She has matured and she's better now. No offense to anyone, but she knows that she really felt entitled, and she just trashed me. I guess she didn't know English, and I didn't know French very well. I thought I knew French better than I did. They talked right in front of me, and I didn't understand what was happening. I was trying to figure it out, but yeah, I didn't know French that well. And oh, she was terrible. She was horrible. And to see Cyril was such a sweet, humble person who was so thoughtful and romantic, and then he just turned into this arrogant, stereotypical arrogant Frenchman that was so critical and controlling. Oh, I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to make a good French wife. Sorry, Cyril, I just can't do it. We remained friends, and I didn't cut him off. We still kind of lingered for months. but it was just never the same, after his sister came and things happened, and I was able to remember some unfortunate, some that Cyril was involved in, and it just changed. It just ruined everything for me. He was not my husband. I knew that in 1996, but I don't think Cyril knew that yet, but that's why I didn't end up marrying him. But we were trying to have a baby, and once I didn't get pregnant, I was like, oh, I never worried about it again, even though we were not going to get. In my mind, we weren't going to end up together or get married. But I was still intimate with him for a while. It felt natural to kind of like not just do a cold turkey thing. It was just like gradually we stopped seeing each other. It wasn't overnight. We kind of eased into it, and I guess I conceived a lot of babies because I know that Ethan would not have been a triplet unless I naturally conceived him as a triplet. I mean, I'm thinking because his I can't get over how Hunter Chapin looks so much. I mean, he looks more like Prince Jackson than he looked like Ethan. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, okay, so I'm thinking they're my triplets. Okay, I can see I had a lot of triplets. I'm didn't. Our family has a lot of twins. We have the genes for twins, and I had a lot of triplets. Suri Cruise is a triplet. I'm still waiting to see Stone and her brother Stone and Sophie. I named them myself around the time of Sophie's Choice. That's why I named her Sophie. And Stone, I lived on Edgerstone Road in Princeton, New Jersey, spelled with a U, Stoune. Looking forward to meeting my triplets, my Cruise triplets. But he's not the only father. It's somebody else. It's actually BG's genetic father, who was my high school sweetheart, who is so Suri Cruise's triplet brother and triplet sister were fathered by my high school sweetheart, who is BG Jack's genetic father. Okay. And everybody was naturally conceived in my body and removed after 1 month of development and frozen until a woman in the future could be implanted with them. That's how that worked. And I do believe that David had access to this kind of top secret information. He knew where my children were. He knew their names, and he targeted them. And I don't know about Xana. I know Kaylee and MADDIE, definitely I see myself in them, and I see myself in Xana too, but I don't really know because I can't confirm this. But of course, Ethan was going out with Xana, so he would have wiped them both, right? I mean, I guess that's was his thinking, but maybe she's another of my children. I don't know. I do not know. Just want to point that out. And that's, these are some answers for all of those many people who ask why these beautiful children, because they were my children. I mean, I didn't raise them. I didn't give birth to them, but they're my genetic children, I believe. And that's why they were targeted. And I'm really sorry that it was those children in particular. I have many, many children. I don't know, hundreds, thousands. I'm not really sure. And I did not naturally conceive them. Many of them were conceived in a laboratory. They're test tube babies, many of them, like the Chapins we're talking about. And somebody got them to talk about that so that I would comment or to introduce subject matter. IVF, that's the cover story. My babies. Everybody calls my babies IVF, and IVF usually involves one or both parents, the egg and sperm, or the sperm and the egg of a woman, depending, usually you get IVF when the mother can't conceive, right? And usually it's the mother. My female relatives, most of them, all of my daughters, genetic daughters, they cannot conceive naturally because they're my daughters. This is how it works. And all my sons can, of course, naturally conceive, but the daughters can't. And so and it's just not just my daughters. I'm not saying their mother is my daughter. I'm just saying that a lot of my female relatives can't conceive either, and so they implant them with my babies. This is what they do. And obviously Ethan's mother was not able to conceive naturally. Hunter, though, he looks just like friends. I mean, they're like twins. So I'm just thinking I naturally conceived them with Cyril, but the father, Ethan's father, does look a little similar. So I can't really confirm or not whether true, but I'm thinking it must be. All right, so that might be one of the answers why. And I humbly apologize for the disgusting, horrible behavior of David as Bryan. And I really am looking forward to David revealing his true identity so that Bryan Kohberger's parents know it was not their child who did this. I think David owes Bryan Kohberger's family, his sisters, his family, the truth. He did away with the boy who was born Bryan Kohberger so that he could hijack his life, and he's part of a special lineage and gets money or something through being him, and he decided to relive his life because his real life, just always missed the train in his real life. He was redoing his life through Bryan, and it didn't turn out well at all. And I'm really sorry for what happened. But yeah, Bryan Kohberger's family and friends all deserve to know the truth. And the universe deserves to know the truth. David is Devadatta from the Lotus Sutra. He's proving that even devils can become enlightened. That's what the Lotus Sutra teaches. The Lotus Sutra is the only teaching in existence that proves that even in the old days, women didn't have any rights. And so men didn't think women could achieve enlightenment. Of course, now we know they probably have an easier time of achieving enlightenment than men, but it's the only teaching that guarantees that women, children, and devils can attain enlightenment in their present form. A woman doesn't have to become a man, doesn't have to reincarnate as a man. A child doesn't have to grow up into an adult, and a devil does not have to be done away with to become an angel, to become enlightened. Okay, a child, and a woman can become enlightened in their current form. They don't have to change into any other form to become enlightened. Everyone has the potential to be enlightened, even devils, children, and women. And this is the thing about all other teachings. There's no other teaching on earth that women can become enlightened. And so many women follow these other teachings, not understanding that they do not claim that women can become enlightened. It's only the Lotus Sutra that does. And that's because it's the only teaching that is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So many other teachings are edited by humans, men in particular. They edit it to fit their own ideas, and they're not the whole truth. They're the edited truth. They're the incomplete truth. They're the distorted truth. The Lotus Sutra is undistorted. It's unedited. It is the whole and complete truth. And there's no other teaching by the Buddha that was the whole truth other than the Sutra. And if you follow a different teaching of the Buddhas, please discard it and immediately embrace the Lotus Sutra. Okay, I guess that's all that I have to say. I think this documentary, it's very moving, very well filmed. I mean, these are professional filmmakers. I guess it's my people who did this because it's just an amazing series so far. This first episode is the photography, and it's beautiful. Thank you. And I know they intentionally angle and the lighting just right so I would not mistake how much Hunter Chapin, Ethan's triplet brother, looks very much like Prince Jackson. All right, peace out.